My guest today on Entre Nous is pastry chef and best-selling author David Lebovitz. He's lived in Paris for the past 20 years and is known around the world for his many books, as well as his award-winning blog, all about Paris and its food. David, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm always happy to be here.
So you created perhaps one of the very first huge food and lifestyle blogs ever. But for our viewers who might not be familiar with your work, just very quickly, tell us how you got from the United States to France and really became the food guru of Paris.
Oh, well, it was United Flight 24. It was on December. I'd been living in San Francisco, Northern California, which I was working as a pastry chef. I was working at Chez Panisse, and we were doing a lot of, cuisine du marché, cooking locally, using products like goat cheese, olive oil, lamb, wine, and so forth. And it seemed like a very horizontal move to come to France because the climate was the same. Everybody talked about food and still does. And so it just seemed like a very natural place for me to move to. I was never a Francophile. I didn't speak any French. And I was very naive. So I was like, I'm just going to move to France.
And you did.
And here I am.
So back then, I came a long time ago as well. A lot of culture shock, obviously, when you first moved to a new country. What for you was the biggest culture shock, perhaps food-wise, because that's your specialty?
Well, the biggest culture shock, there are several. It's hard to name them all in one short segment. A lot of it was the way people talk to each other, the way French people are very reserved, and Parisians especially. There's a certain code, and they're not mean. There's this whole perception people are mean, but they're not as friendly as like in America. You move into a new apartment, the neighbors invite you over for drinks. In France, it might take 2, 3, 5, 8, 10 years to get invited. So those kind of things were very difficult for me to adjust to, and the paperwork, of course.
Of course. We always talk about the paperwork, but what about the food? What shocked you, both good and bad, for the food?
A perfect lead-in, because I was just about to say. But the food actually helped me really integrate here because I was very interested in the food. I was very fascinated by the food culture, and I was already sort of integrated into the food culture. Having been a pastry chef, I studied at École Le Nôtre in France and at Valrhona Chocolate School. So I already had a little bit of an in.
Yeah.
Also, as you know, living as an American, sometimes people assume you don't know about food here.
Boy, were they wrong.
Yeah, boy, were they wrong.
Because since then, of course, David, you've written several books. One of them is My Paris Kitchen, one of your books that you've written. And what's great is since then you have shared countless recipes to all of your followers, not just recipes, but tips. I, for example, first found out about you when I was looking to find corn syrup for a pecan pie. And I think you recommended to go to an Asian food store. Fantastic tip. And I found it. Your site's also great for things like turning cups into grams. What's the question you get asked the most, would you say, from your non-French followers?
Nowadays, it's how can I move to France?
Apart from that one.
Yeah, that takes about 15, 20 years, as you know. A lot of people, what was really interesting was when I moved here, everybody wanted to know about French flour. And I was actually bringing flour over from the U.S. because the flour is very different. And my French friends and my partner were shocked. He's like, why do you bring flour? I'm like, well, just... You don't understand. This is my whole. For you, it's nothing, but for me, it's very important. So people were asking me a lot why I was bringing things like corn syrup and brown sugar and flour.
Baking powder.
Yeah, baking powder. Yes, you have a list.
I'm a baker.
Yeah, so those kind of things I needed to have just because of my work. I was writing recipes for a global audience, and I use. France has wonderful food products, supplies, and chocolates and so forth, but they're different. So.
And France, of course, obviously very well known for its pastry. But talking to the newsroom, there are some things that the French still quite can't get. I feel cookies. Okay. Do you agree?
Well, there is. What's funny is there isn't really a word for cookies. They do say le cookies in French, but it always refers to chocolate chip cookies. When I moved here, I was trying to get ice cream scoops, the spring-loaded ones that we use in America to make cookies, and I couldn't find them in different sizes here. And finally, I went to a store in Les Halles, I think it was de Hilleron, and I said, do you have any scoops? He goes, Monsieur, in France, we do not scoop cookies. I was like, okay, got it.
Yeah,
Now they have them.
We'll have to book a private lesson because mine always turn out flat in this country.
It's the flour.
Probably the flour. All right, we'll talk about this off the set, David. You don't just obviously do pastry. You do a lot of regular food as well. What's your go-to meal when you have guests who come visit?
Oof. It really depends. A lot of times when people are coming from another country, such as the United States, I might do something like a grand aioli at home because people...
Aioli is like a garlicky mayonnaise for this.
It's a garlicky mayonnaise with lots of raw or, sort of very quickly cooked vegetables. And, the French have this wonderful cuisine, but when you go out to eat in France, there aren't a lot of vegetables. So Americans are always like, oh my God, vegetables. And then I always get a lot of cheeses just because that's, if you have to name the top 3 reasons we live in France, probably cheese is one of them.
I completely agree with you. All right, how about this? Then what's your secret go-to fast food in France or homemade meal? Where do you go?
Well, I actually love poulet rôti. The butcher shops, they have these delicious spit-roasted chickens. My partner's a little less, because he's French. And, to them, it's very ordinary. To me, it's like I could eat it every day. So it's kind of a joke between us. He calls me Monsieur Poulet. Because I always like, let's just get a roast chicken. So I do like the poulet rôti. I probably shouldn't admit this on TV, but my sort of favorite fast food is there's a pizza from Picard that has...
Picard, a frozen food store that everyone should check out when they come to Paris.
Yes, and it has arugula on it and speck, which is a smoked ham. I add chorizo, chili paste, and then extra basil. The secret is to bake it 3 to 5 minutes longer than the package says.
Interesting. So our assistant producer on the show, Georgina, was saying one of her favorite things to do is to go into Picard and look for the strangest frozen things she can find. For example, frozen sandwiches.
Oh, yeah. Frozen. Right now they have a frozen breakfast sandwich.
Ah, something to look out for.
I just talked about it on my Instagram feed. It's maybe...
Is it worth checking out?
Can I decline?
All right, no comment, we say. Another book that you wrote recently, which I just love, is not about food, but about drinking French, which again I find interesting because for me, Paris is not a cocktail city.
It's funny, when I was writing this book, my French friends were like, why are you writing a book about French drinks? And then I would start naming all these, they would call them like forgotten aperitifs, like Dubonnet. And then they'd get all glossy, like, my grandmother used to have that. And so then they realized it was an interesting subject. And a lot of cocktails were invented, actually, in France during Prohibition. Americans came to France and they could drink. And Americans are also known for fun. We do fun really well. It's like, what can we do fun with this liquor? So they would, they would mix it with different things, like French vermouth, for example, which was delicious and wonderful and still is, to make cocktails. And so a lot of cocktails were invented in France.
So I shouldn't be désespéré, as we say. I shouldn't be desperate that there aren't good cocktails in Paris.
No, there are. We have there's very good cocktail bars in Paris.
I'll go on the hunt for it. We just have a minute left, David. I just put together a little mini quiz because being an American living in Paris, I imagine there are things you like or miss about U.S. delicacies and French delicacies.
I'm getting nervous.
So, if we had to compare baked brie, which is an American appetizer where you take cheese and stick it in the oven, or camembert, what do you pick?
Mean baked camembert or?
No, a baked brie eaten the American way, dipped with
or
cracker, or just a plain old camembert.
I prefer.
Vous préférez a camembert. Ouais. Okay, how about a steak frites, steak and French fries, or barbecue?
That's a tough one. I do like barbecue.
It's coming in a little bit here in France, but not quite here. Okay,
they don't have the same meat.
Croque monsieur or a grilled cheese?
Croque monsieur.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I highly recommend that to all people who come to Paris. All right, and one last one, Pop-Tart or croissant?
Croissant.
Of course, you saved me.
Although I like the glaze on Pop-Tarts, I'm not.
Yeah, I think everyone likes to look at that, but we'll actually go for a croissant. David Lebovitz, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's a true pleasure. And you can find all of David's recipes, Paris dining, travel tips, etc. on your website, davidlebovitz.com.
Yes, my website and my newsletter.
And your newsletter and on social media. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you.